So Dr. Molly Ness is a former classroom teacher, a professor, and a reading researcher. The author of 5 books, she sits on the New York State Dyslexia Task Force and the New York chapter of the Reading League. When she's not reading and writing about reading and writing, she's shuttling her teenage daughter to ice hockey tournaments. But we have her here today. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Dr. Molly Ness.
Good morning, and thank you. It is an absolute honor to be with you in this special place. The first time I entered this building, I think it was pre-COVID, I tried not to drool. Books everywhere, corridors where beloved authors like Judy Blume had walked, the magic of literacy under one roof. You see, I am a self-professed reading geek, and I have documentation of that to show you. Here I am in 1986 at my school library. And if you can't read the font on the bottom, it reads, "I love my library because I like to be in the AV club." Thank you. Yes, it's not surprising that a geeky kid who stayed after school to get specialized training in how to advance the film strip when it went beep grew up to be a teacher, a professor, a reading researcher, and a fierce literacy advocate. And I know I'm in good company today with my fellow literacy nerds. We play many roles in the literacy lives of children. We are teachers, librarians, school and district leaders, book editors, sales teams, librarians, and authors. But we all share a common focus, which is to help children both learn to read and to love to read. I am reminded of the words from my colleague, Carol Yago, who writes in her text, the book in question, "If we are not helping students to become confident, habitual readers, I don't know what business we're in." We meet at an exciting time in our nation's literacy landscape, from documentary films to podcasts to social media to front page coverage in the New York Times. Conversations about the science of reading seem to be at fever pitch. So many of these conversations feel like gloom and doom. We waited in the fall of 2022 with bated breath for the results of the National Assessment of Education Progress. The NAEP is the national thermometer of our students' reading abilities. And like many, I was crestfallen, not only to see the dip in numbers, but also, in my mind, most importantly, a stagnation of progress across 3 decades. Equally bleak are the data showing decreases in students reading for pleasure, as shown also by NAEP data. And again, in 2024, from a report out of Australia, which shows a significant decline in teenage reading frequency. I wish we could say this is just unique to Australia. Of course, it's not. Scholastic reports shows that nearly 1/3 of our teens are not reading for pleasure. So amongst the many things that keep me up at night, worries about global warming, whether I've eaten enough calcium to support my middle-aged bones, and if my teenage daughter is a polite house guest, is the twin crisis of literacy, the combination of illiteracy, too many children struggling to read, and illiteracy, the intentional decision not to read. But rather than focus on what might feel like these bleak declines, I invite us today to instead look at an upward spiral of literacy. And let me walk you through this graphic if you haven't seen it already. And as I do, I hope that you will reflect upon how you can contribute to this upward spiral in the work that you do and what your role is. So when children encounter texts that are engaging, reflective, and relevant, they intentionally read for pleasure. Reading for pleasure bathes children in an upward trajectory of positive impacts, more vocabulary, increased fluency, more background knowledge, so that reading becomes efficient, purposeful, and enjoyable. The idea is also demonstrated in research. A 2023 article from Developmental Science shows that literacy skills fuel literacy enjoyment, not vice versa. I'm happy to share this article. I will not ask you to, I will not provide statistical assessment of it, but take my word for it that this research shows that reading skills impact enjoyment, while the influence in the other direction was zero. So this is the secret sauce in reading motivation. When reading is pleasurable, children choose to read and thus become better readers. And reading has a positive cascade of effects. Let's look at some of them. Medically fragile premature babies who are read to in the neonatal intensive care unit undergo physiological benefits, lowered heart rates, improved blood oxygenation rates. They literally reach medical homeostasis just by having parents and caregivers read to them. Children who read to animals in shelter increase their self-efficacy and confidence in reading. Teens who read report better mental health. Singles who identify themselves as readers on dating sites are more likely to catch the eye of potential suitors. I need to go tweak my profile now. And seniors who read increase their mental clarity and sharpness. So how do we get to this upward cycle of literacy and the well-documented physiological, linguistic, academic, and socio-emotional benefits? Well, we get there through many voices coming to the table to discuss literacy, just as we're doing in this room today. We get there by understanding what evidence shows us about effective reading instruction. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't operationalize first thing in the morning what we mean by the science of reading, because there's so many misconceptions about it, and it's become a game of telephone. As these conversations around the science of reading increase in frequency, intensity, let's clarify the science of reading. It's not a fad, it's not a trend, it's not a new thing, nor is it a focus on phonics instruction alone. The most commonly accepted definition of the science of reading comes from the Reading League, who provides this definition. In a nutshell, the science of reading is a long-standing body of interdisciplinary research that shows us the magnificent processes by which the brain acquires a new skill, building neural connections between parts of the brain so that we effortlessly and efficiently translate those random scratches on the page, which are letters, into sounds. We push sounds into words, and we string words into meaningful passages with the aim to comprehend what we read. Yes, there's a science to it, a science that evolves every day, but there's also a magic to it. And you in this room, teachers, librarians, authors, and publishers, you make that magic happen. As reading researcher Daniel Willingham states, the fact that reading needs to be taught doesn't make it any less magical. So today really is an integration of magic and science, culminating in reading with purpose. Here's how our day will work. We will first hear from practitioners who integrate science with magic in schools, classrooms, and reading clinics every day. We will hear from authors who are the magicians of compelling characters, captivating storylines, and unforgettable plots. These authors write a variety of text formats for a variety of readers on a variety of topics. They'll speak individually about their craft and contributions and tackle some bigger issues collaboratively during our panel. We'll have a working lunch, so we'll break at about 12. There will be lunch out there. You can bring it back, meet your colleagues at your table. And in this working lunch, I will host the author panel. After lunch, we'll hear from one more educator, and then I'll facilitate an educator panel. The format was intentional. We want to honor the expertise and experiences our teachers in the field have, and they will literally have the last word in our conversation today, as too often teacher voices are not heard. One of the areas that we will unpack today comes from a question that I hear from teachers all across the country, that as we align the science of reading to instruction, What type of texts do we use? When, why, and how? The quick and easy answer is depicted in this image from author illustrator Jarrett Lerner, who reminds us that kids need books of all kinds. The more complicated nuances and practicalities of which text, when, why, and how will be explored by educators today. And I hope that you walk away from today with practical and engaging strategies to maximize the various types of text you use, with the clarity that all type of texts serve essential roles in the science of reading, as well as reinvigorated energy around the diverse, high-quality texts from Penguin Random House. Thank you for being here. I know it's a crazy time of year to those of you who are in schools. My most sincere gratitude go to the Penguin Random House folks, especially Colin Rublinger, who made today possible. So let's get started.